Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to a brand new video. You'll have to be patient with me. I'm moving into my craft room. We're finally at the end of the process there. It's still a lot of a mess, so I'm filming a little bit vlog style today in a different location. But today I'm using my lovely Lantanas stamp set, and I'm going to show how to use those solid images to do some beautiful shading techniques with your ink pads. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so for today's video, I'm using the new lovely Lantanas stamp set from Simon Hurley Create. I love this one because it has the solid images to fill it in with color with ink pads, and you can also use the lined images to just color, and the sentiments on this are fantastically encouraging. So I'm going to start off with my first card, and I'm using the MISTI stamping tool on a slim line size card, and I'm going to create kind of a border coming in from either edge using the larger flower. Now I'm taking a sticky grid mat in my MISTI stamping tool so I can stick down my slimline card in the center of it and not have to worry about magnets getting in the way of my stamp or it moving and shifting. This really helps. Then I'm going to ink it up and stamp it down in some jet black Archival ink, making sure to give good pressure on my stamping tool so that everything transfers. Then all I have to do is peel it up, flip it over, and do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm not moving the stamp at all, and I'm just going to lay it exactly where the other one was and re-stamp it. So this is a really great way to get a border on either side, whether you use one stamp like this or several, and then just flip it to create the same reverse image on the other side. Alright, so for my first coloring and shading, I'm going to use my Simon Hurley Create ink pads and the larger solid image of the flower. I'm going to start off with a light color that I've added to the center, and then move into some darker tones, and to add the shading down, I'm going to just use the edge of the ink pad and start off the stamp and kind of roll my way on, until I stop, until I have a little bit of ink onto the edges there. And I'm going to do that all the way around. This applies a nice solid color to the whole stamp, and once I have all the colors down, I can spray it with a little bit of water and then move on to stamping it right down onto my surface there. The water just kind of helps it blend together, but I'll also show another way to help it blend a little bit as well. So once that's all stamped down, you'll see that beautiful color there, and I loved that I was able to do that with one pass of the acrylic block and stamp. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing for the other side to color that flower in. I love how quick and easy this is, but when I'm done adding that color, I'm going to go in with a little bit of my blending tool and just kind of tap around the edge. This is not going to remove too much color, but it's going to kind of blend the colors in between to make sure that you have a more seamless transition of color there. I found that to be really helpful when I was doing this, and I also, again, it doesn't take away too much color, so it's still nice and bold and vibrant. Now for the leaves, I'm going to do the same thing, start off with a lighter color, here I used Psych, and then move into the darker color and roll it onto the surface. I find that the rolling technique kind of avoids harsh edges instead of just placing it right down flat onto the surface. Then I'm going to stamp in all of the leaves there, and I love how quick and easy that was to color everything in since we had the solid stamps. Now for the sentiment, I'm going to use the large encouraging word stamp set. I love how big these are because they tend to fill a card really nice and easily. Here I kind of lined up the images to see which one I wanted to use, and I ended up using the follow your dreams and don't let anyone stop you. I love that sentiment because it's so super encouraging for anybody. So I'm going to stamp that down. Here I used the MISTI stamping tool in case if I needed to stamp it twice, and that helps to make sure that I don't make any mistakes. Now I'm going to line up that same outline stamp and stamp it down onto some Gina K masking magic paper. This is because I wanted to add a little bit of color into that background without getting it onto the flowers. So after stamping it down, I'm going to cut it out with my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors right along the edge of that image. I'm only going to need to cut one side because that's the side I'm using to do my ink blending. This is pretty easy to do, and I really recommend using these Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. They kind of spring back out at you so your hands don't get tired, and also they have a really fine tip so they're really easily able to get into all of those details as you're fussy cutting. I find that these are super helpful. So once I've cut that out, I'll remove the back of that masking paper, and then I can easily line it up along the edge of that image there. This was really nice and easy to do once I had that all cut out, and then I can reuse this mask a couple different times, so it makes it worth it to cut that out, and I just kind of keep it in the stamp package and store it with it so I have it on hand if I need it again. Now I'm going to add a little bit of color using the Gina K blender brushes and my Clear Skies ink pad. This is going to add kind of a subtle and soft color to the background, and I went in with the blending brushes because I wanted that softer color. If I went in with the blending tool here, it might start off a little bit too dark, but this way I can kind of fade the color in and work in layers as I build the color up to however dark I want it to. It takes a little bit more time, but I find you get a really nice soft blend, which is what I was going for here. Then I can kind of pull that color in as far as I would like and then peel off that masking magic paper. I love how easy that was, and the masking magic isn't sticky enough to rip your cardstock, which is super nice. I'm going to flip it and then add it down to the other side as well and do the exact same thing on the other side, blending that clear skies in and building up the color a little bit until I find that it's dark enough, and then I can peel off my mask. And I love that we have both of those sides colored so quickly and easily after cutting the mask out. I love how that color really adds to the final effect of the card and draws your attention to the highlighted center of the card where that beautiful sentiment is. And that was super easy to color everything in with those solid stamps. Now that that's done, I wanted to share the exact same technique. Here I did that kind of rolling technique to get that shading, but instead of stamping down the lined image in black first, I just went in with the solid images and stamped them down in color. So here you'll see me stamping down that large cluster of flowers, and instead of the details being in dark black, here they are just kind of left free, and they still have all that awesome detail in it, but you don't need to have the outlines, which I think is really awesome. So it's a totally different look to the stamp. Same thing with these leaves. I'm able to stamp them in and kind of puzzle it in like a puzzle, and you get that really beautiful effect. It almost makes it look like you didn't have any lines to color this, like you freehanded it, and it looks a little bit more natural, which I love. The different options that you have. I stamped down the sentiment, and that finishes off the card super easily as well. I love this one, and like I said, it's just another really great option when you're using layering stamps like this. Now moving on into the next card and technique, I'm going to take the outline image again and stamp that down onto a piece of my stark white cardstock. Here I again use my MISTI stamping tool just in case if it didn't stamp perfectly the first time. I'm able to go back in, make sure that it's lined up in the exact same corner of that MISTI stamping tool, and restamp it in my Jet Black Archival ink. That is super helpful, and it's been a big lifesaver for me whenever I'm stamping larger images like this. Now, after I'm done with that, I can go in and line up the images that are solid and use those on top for coloring and shading. Now, I like to do this part in my MISTI stamping tool, but these are pretty easy to line up, so if you want to do several steps just using your acrylic block, you totally could. For the first layer, I'm going in with a really light color. Here I used a little bit of Over the Moon ink from my Simon Hurley Create line. And then to add shading, I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to go in with a darker color, so here I'm using a little bit of Slippery When Wet. But instead of going in directly with the ink pad, I'm going to go in with my domed foam blending tools. Just add a little bit of ink onto the blending tool by swiping back and forth, and then I can go in and dot the color on to the surface with my blending tool. This is going to give me less harsh marks, and it'll also give me a little bit more control on where I can put the blender to add the color. Now you're going to have to work in several layers. I like to do about 2 layers of each color to get it nice, bold, and vibrant, but it definitely gives you a nice softer edge and creates more of a beautiful blended effect. It definitely does take a little bit longer. You saw me do the first technique with 1 stamp of the acrylic block. This one you can work in layers like this, but you get really beautiful and stunning blends in the end, depending on what colors you use, which I think is so much fun to play around with. Here I went in with a little bit of Prom Queen, and each time you add a new color, you're just going to want to go closer and closer to the edge, as you can add a little bit of dark color to the edge while still seeing the other colors that you added. So there, I love that beautiful shading around the edge of that image. And here I'm going to add in the leaves. And instead of having to do these all separately, I was able to line them all up separately and then attach them to that MISTI door, so they're all in the MISTI stamping tool door there. And then I can do them all at once. So here I went in with my Psych ink pad, which is that really nice light green color. I'm able to stamp that down and get all of the leaves done in one pass, which is another great advantage of the MISTI. Now once I'm done with that, I can add my shading down to that green as well. So here I use a little bit of the Later Gator ink pad to dot on a little bit of shading with my blending tool here. And once that's all done, you'll see that when I stamp it over, it just adds that nice darker color to the leaves and gives it a little bit more depth and dimension. I love this technique, like I said, and you can really play around with different color combos. Here I used a lighter yellow and a light pink, and then finished it off with a darker, deeper purple around the edge, and I love that beautiful effect as well. So you can totally change up how the whole flower looks with different colors as you're going in and blending it down, but that gives a nice soft blend, which I love. Now to finish off the background of the card that I'm creating today, I'm going to go in with the Honey Hive stencil to add these hexagons down, and use a little bit of bee sting to give a nice tone-on-tone effect on this orangey kind of red cardstock base. Then once I'm done with that, I'll add the flower down that I shaded today on a little bit of foam tape, and then add the sentiment down that says sending love from that same lovely Lantanas stamp set. I love this technique, and although it takes several more layers, it gives a really beautiful and realistic shaded look. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button down below to never miss another card making and crafting video like this one from me. Alright guys, thanks for spending time with me today, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!